I'm Tony Clark, this is Thierry Bonneau. We are the leading lights of Cambridge Super 8 Group, and we got invited to this, and they said creative geekery, and thought, oh, that's what we do. And I heard somebody from the previous group saying something about cottage cheese and marmalade, which sounds like our sort of thing. We do something a wee bit different, it's also chemical. We are still trying to keep film alive, film, not digital bits of stuff, but actual film alive, and specifically movie film, and even more specifically domestic movie film. It's hard to believe, but up until about 30 odd years ago, this is really quite a big, serious deal in this country as a hobby, home movie making. People actually bought seriously fancy cameras that ran on batteries and shot films with them. What you got was a very convenient little format, which was Super 8 cartridges. You got 15 meters of film in a cartridge, running 18 frames a second, and that gives you just over 3 minutes on a film. Obviously, like film, and I'm mindful you have to sort of explain this from scratch these days, you didn't get to see your results immediately. You shot this sort of blind and on faith and on whatever technique you had. You sent it off to a laboratory, it came back, you spooled it up onto a projector, which you then fired at a screen on the wall and said, oh God, is that what it looks like? And people got really into this and spent quite a lot of money on it. And then around about 1981-82, the home video recorder turned up. It was VHS, and if you remember how rubbish VHS is in terms of quality now, in those days it was a miracle, and everybody said, oh my God, we can just play films on the telly. And Super 8 sort of died very rapidly. The equipment was built to last, the film was still very readily available. What happened is it stopped being a home indulgence, and artists picked it up, and our patron saint is Derek Jarman. If you've ever seen any Jarman stuff like Wittgenstein and Jubilee and a whole load of stuff he made over the years, he was an enormous Super 8 fan. He got the habit from his father, and he realised essentially you could get the equipment for virtually nothing because almost nobody wanted it by then. The film wasn't madly expensive. You got the clarity of film, you've got the lovely colour density, because early video, the colour was really appalling, and VHS, nice idea if you record it straight off. If you try dubbing it, you lose all the chroma signal the first time you copy it. It's really poor quality. So film hung on, and people thought, oh, let's reinvent this as a fun, artistic thing. And that's sort of where we come from. We started a festival in 2007, which we ran for 5 years, where we invited people to send in films that they had actually shot on Super 8, though transferred to a digital format. And we discovered there's people worldwide are still supporting this in a very big way. They've got all the equipment, some of it they've gone out and bought. Some of them professionals who use this in things like the advertising industry when people want a certain sort of slightly grungy, saturated look, and only Super 8 film really does that. Some of them rescued stuff out of their grandparents' attics. Some of them found them in charity shops. I mean, you can sometimes buy... We got given virtually all these cameras, and you can often buy a perfectly functioning camera in a charity shop for 20 quid or less. And people just buy these things, buy a roll of film wherever they can get it, stick it in, take a punt on it, get the habit, and they say, ooh, we're filmmakers. And that's where we come from. There are people doing documentaries, people do fiction stuff, people do little 1-minute films, people are doing 50-minute films. They just do whatever they please them. It's become a sort of a DIY punk, no limits, no tastes, no choices, no pressure medium. People do it entirely on their own budgets. It really is a geek hobby. And this is what happens. What's happened over the years is the scale of Super 8 has scaled down. Kodak, who used to support it in a very big way, are now in financial difficulties, and they have scaled down their film production. They are still nevertheless the main maker of films. They used to do Kodachrome. Everything you hear about Kodachrome was true. You can't use it anymore because it's a developing process you can't get. But all those beautiful dense colours you see in retro film footage, Kodachrome 40. What you get nowadays, a lot of people have gone over to shooting in black and white. This is Tri-X, which gives that lovely fizzy black and white look that music video people really like. This is another one that I've been using really, and I'm really excited by it. This is actually new on the market. Every so often a manufacturer comes in and brings in a new film stock and says, let's give that a go. And this is a German one called ADOX. It's a black and white one. It's really nice and crispy. It's only been available in this country about a year, and I'm really looking forward to using a whole lot more of this. And Thierry would like to say something about an even newer product, which is really geeky.
Yeah, some of the last year have seen actually a manufacturer which bankrupt a few years ago, which is an Italian film manufacturer called Feronia, coming back with the idea to actually revive some color film that normally now is discontinued from Kodak. So I'm going to show you an example of what the look of Super 8 looks like. We've got a video here, and I'm going to go through a picture and give you an idea of what you can have with Super 8 with a different film stock, and you will see a clear difference between obviously the black and white, where you get that sort of grungy look, 1950, and maybe some different color stock, which are the reversible family that now is discontinued and Feronia wants to revive, and the negative color films, which actually are film stock cut from the Hollywood 35mm, but down for Super 8 cartridges. So you've got exactly the same film latitude that you have with a professional stock, because it is a professional stock, except with Super 8 you will have a bit of more grain. So if you look at, for example, the latitude of films, the New Vision stocks in color, you get a latitude over 9 stops. So you will have still a lot of details in the shadow, a lot of details in the highlights. As for example, even the best digital camera, if you have too much contrast between a scene, you have to choose between the details in the shadows or details in the light. And you know, sometimes when you see a film shot in video, if it's a high contrast scene where it's maybe shot inside and you see a bit of the outside is completely white, but some of these negative vision stock will pick up details, as you will see with your eyes, because the eye is just adapting to the light. This film stock will react differently because they are not the same technology as the video technology.
It's taken video 30 years to catch up with what film still does every day. That's the interesting thing. Also, just before we show the films that we've got samples of, the interesting thing about the Feronia project is it's a crowdfunding thing. They put out an appeal, say we've basically got a factory, will somebody help us buy it? And it's basically being turned into a giant Kickstarter thing. We're putting their money down in return for a pre-order. Yeah. So this is people rescuing the stuff they want and say, we want to own it. And okay. That's really a really encouraging thing for the future just in itself.
So we have a few films that we're going to play. Some of the film we shot it within the group, and some were actually shot by professional cinematographers. So you will see the picture is sometimes quite nice. So if we can play the video, please. Okay. So the first film is shot, I think, on black and white. Okay, hope it's going to work. Still on pause. There we go. So that's a film which is black and white, Tri-X. So that's this one. And you can see actually you've got a bit of grain on the film, but I think for that particular film some reprocessing was done, and you may have some bit of grain, but you still have nice black and white density, and it doesn't look like, you know, what you can get with a video camera necessarily. So that's the ADOX film, which Tony is showing here. And that particular film actually extract was developed in Cafenol, which is just coffee, and you can do it at home. If you got the film, you can develop it as a negative in coffee, vitamin C, and that film has been developed at home.
Anything with appropriate vitamin content. The chemistry of film developing is really weird and wonderful. And we have a German friend who does this, and she does it in coffee, she develops in beer, she develops in red wine, and she's been developing potato juice.
So that
This is real home geekery.
is, if you recognize the Botanic Garden, it's something that we shot with Tony, and Tony did the processing. We shot that last year. So you might not imagine from that black and white that it was shot last year. You've got that period look. So that's the Ektachrome, which is now discontinued, and you could put that color film straight to a separate projector, and you would be able to project the picture opposite to the negative, where actually you can't use the picture. So that was shot, if you remember, last year, the Tour de France, a year ago. So we shot that in Cambridge. And Ektachrome is giving you really saturated colors, as you can see here. There is no processing on a computer. It's the color as you will see it from the projector. Very rich, very saturated. So the Feronia project is trying to bring back this color stock. So that's the negative vision from Kodak. So for that, you will see actually the picture is less saturated. You've got more details, less grain, and the color scheme are very realistic. But at the same time, the latitude of the film is much better than the reversal. So you will have details in a shadow, details in a highlight.
This is stuff pros shoot pro film on.
But but you can get these stocks. We tried some of these stocks, and I think the last film you will see, which is after this one, is a wedding I shot for a friend last year. So I tried this stock. It's lovely, and you get particularly no grain. If you want more grain, you can use a different stock. So that's something. Again, the color is well reproduced. Very soft colors, and I think that's the last extract. This one. So we touch a tiny bit on the film stock. So now the next thing is, what can you do when you have shot with a separate camera the films? Obviously, you need to process the films. So maybe Tony, if you can give an idea of how you process the film.
Okay, the lazy way is you send it off to a laboratory, bearing in mind the nearest one that now does colour film stock, so they do to a very high standard, is in Berlin. There is nothing really operating in this country, well, not many operating in this country.
There is a guy actually you can find on the internet. I think he's operating on a website. Yeah. And he will hand process the film, color, black and white. So if you don't want to put your hands into the chemistry, I think he's based in the north of England. Yeah. So he will do that as soon as he got enough film. He will do a batch.
Yes, and we also have a friend in Leeds who's got her own lab. She works in 16mm, and we're hoping she's going to start doing Super 8 stuff. We'll have to nudge her about that. But the other thing is, if you are into these things and you have access to a darkroom, you can in fact do it yourself. The critical thing is that when you open up the cartridge, you've got something that's 8mm wide and 15 meters long, and there's an awful lot of it, and you've got to get it all developed evenly. I have developed, this is a little home, this is real geekery. This is made out of a piece of plastic drain pipe and some strimmer cable, because you have to have chemically inert plastics or stainless steel. What you do is you get your roll of film, you in fact roll it round as a spiral. This thing goes inside a rotary developing tank. There's a proprietary one called a Jobo. You can pour a litre of solution into the light trap. You basically roll it out. That black and white film that Thierry mentioned, we actually developed that in his sink.
Yeah,
in
that's right.
Cherry
So
Hinton. We actually, I loaded it in the dark, but we actually just pour. We used a proprietary developer called Rodinol. You can get these things from chemical suppliers. There's a very good one down in London called Silverprint, and I buy all my stuff for.
yeah.
As I say, you can also, there are various proprietary ways of working with fruit juices. Thierry can give you a very long lecture about the chemistry involved
Yeah.
here, being a chemist. The main thing is if you've got certain compounds that are will activate the film surface, they will in fact develop it, and a lot of those to be found in organic materials. And there are a lot of people having a ton of fun just developing this with the weirdest stuff and say, let's see if it works. You know, it's where filmmaking meets cooking.
And it does.
Yeah.
I would say the time of developing using processed food or juices is
It's
a bit
quite
longer.
It's very slow. It's usually about 20 odd minutes instead of 3 or 4.
Because the chemical which are part of the juice you're going to make are not obvious. They are natural chemicals. They are not targeted for photography, so it's a bit slower. But sometimes you get actually effect that you're not expecting. And one of the thing which is with separate is the sort of the wabi-sabi attitude, where if you want a clear picture, very nice, very skilled, obviously if you got the money, maybe use 35 millimeter, use a lab or whatever. But if you want the unexpected, the thing you're not planning, and if you're happy with that, to experiment with that, separate is a good thing, because you got the aesthetic of film, and you've got the unprediction if you work more like in an artisanal way, more than just a control fashion way.
Yeah,
and you've got good unexpected results sometimes.
Yes, wabi-sabi is a Japanese philosophical cone which basically translates as embrace the imperfection. This idea that whatever comes out of it is what there is, and you see it for what it is. And again, our German friend is terribly keen on this and runs workshops on doing it, and she was over here a couple of years ago. But her view is generally, I want to be surprised by what I do, which is quite a excitingly valid artistic thing to do. Because you really are just throwing yourself at this and say, well, whatever I get is whatever happens. So you learn to work artistically around, given materials, which is always quite stimulating.
We touch a bit on the projector earlier on. I think we've got a projector here. So the projection is the next thing. But as you've seen, all these films we shown today were not shown from a projector. So the next thing, when you've got the film processed, you want to transfer it to digital if you want to work it with a computer. And if you want to do that, you need a film scanner. And there is different places in London where you can get your film scanned. So they will scan it. There is different process. Even some people, they've done some DIY scanner where you have a modified projector couple with a camera which will take frame by frame each picture of a camera. So you end up with gigantic files of just for 3 minutes you can get 10 giga file, because each picture has got so much information that you can't compress that. It's just to tell you that films, especially negative film, there is on a tiny frame so much information. Obviously, when it's transferred to digital, the files could be huge.
Yes, you can get several pixels per blob of grain. It entirely tends down to your resolution. And a project I've got working on, or rather it's a large pile of bits in a box, is I'm building a telecine which graphs a projector chassis, a stepper motor, a Raspberry Pi board with its appropriate camera, because that is a very neat sort of tell the motor to go around and take a picture mechanism for doing it, powered by an LED. LED technology is getting very interesting. The power ratings of those is going up. And another thing I'm working on in parallel is working on a projector where you can use a high power LED as the light source instead of a proprietary bulb, because the limitation about blowing up a film picture is a proprietary light bulb, even a high efficiency Xeon one, produces vast amounts of heat, and if you get any problems in the gate, it physically melts the film. LEDs are overcoming this because they've got a power factor of 5 or 6 times better than that. So if you can crank in a power LED down in there, you can overcome this limit of you can't put more than a 200 watt bulb in there. So I'm working on this, and this is again, in the heyday of Super 8, this wasn't an option. Nobody had invented the white LED. Now the film is almost extinct, but the technology that makes it interesting is sort of suddenly come up to critical mass. So there is never a perfect time to do it. It's that you have to grab what there is, and we're across all these things just because we like doing it.
And you will say, why use Super 8? I think there is still some good arguments. Obviously, it's a tactile media, and something we've done before is actually use found footage that you can find in cardboard cell, and manipulating the film with different inks, bleach. You can actually scratch the film, and you will do full new work from something which was done 20, 30, 50 years ago, because this year Super 8 is 50 years. And when you project that work, obviously you have something completely new. You can do scratch animation. You have a unique look of Super 8 that you've seen, and if you want for maybe a lot of people these days, they will use that to different themselves from maybe another type of for a music video, for advertisement. If you want like nostalgic look or flashback in a feature film, you can use Super 8. It's always a good idea. If you want to spice up documentaries, there is a large number of documentaries I've seen in the last years where they will make you believe that what you've seen was shot 20, 30 years ago. And I think last year there was, I can't remember exactly the name of the film, but there was a documentary talking about, a Canadian documentary talking about a childhood. So the narrator was talking about a relation with her parents, and she found out years ago that her dad was not her dad. And all the documentaries was a mixture of interviews of people currently living and films from the past when she was a kid. And actually, all the films from the past when she was a kid was shot, recently with with actors pretending being her. So when you see that, it's fake documentary in a way that it's telling a documentary, but picture is being recreated, and it's working very well. And
of course the most famous, almost the point of dishonest film that uses that, of course, is Oliver Stone's film JFK, which is exhaustively and repeatedly recreates the assassination of John Kennedy in 1963, because, as you probably know, there is a famous sort of, whatever it is, 25 seconds of home movie film shot by Abraham Zapruder, who accidentally, because he was following the car along the road, actually caught the moment at which Kennedy was shot. So there was actually an inadvertent visual record by a bystander of the moment that Kennedy got his head blown off. And there's always been this big argument about what are the blokes running along behind the fence doing, and so there's this inadvertent evidence. And Oliver Stone actually went out and made this bizarre, very overwrought film, but he basically, to try and it ends up doing this enormous counterfactual argument about what do we really know happened, and he takes the Zapruder footage and keeps recreating, supposing it's from this angle, supposing that, and he actually does that on Super 8 until eventually you keep thinking, well, I don't know which is weird and which isn't, which is partly what he does. And it's a very interesting thing to do, and it only really works if you go into that world of this is the little blurry moment which is real history and which will never go away. Which brings to another reason why we also love film is that I've already alluded to VHS. I don't know anybody ever touches a VHS tape now. Back in the day, they were such an enormous thing. But they were very limited, and one of the things that people keep pointing out is that we are in danger of not hanging on to enough of our history, because things that we have captured visually in unprecedented quantities are being captured in formats that have either physically deteriorated or are not supported or don't copy to any quality. And their entire periods of history may just disappear because people will say, we have no record of what that looked like. If you cast something on a piece of stone, it stays there for several thousand years. If you put it on a piece of paper, that lasts a surprisingly long time. And we've now had a century of stuff being on film. We now live in we can account for every year since 1895 because we can see effectively dead people moving, because film, well preserved, lasts for an incredibly long time. Digital or any video format, which is the next great thing, believe me, it's dead in 15 years. We've already been through about 4 generations of stuff, and nobody now bothers to copy it and recopy it. And if you put it in a box and get it out in 50 years' time, it may come out in a pile of little crumbs. The videotape, and the argument is only film is holding on to stuff. So film archivists are now really clinging on to film on the grounds that this may be the last time you actually hold onto anything with any permanence, and they do love film. The BFI has put a lot of money and effort into disseminating and capturing, but they say essentially you're going to have to keep rescanning this for every new form that comes along, but you've still got an original which will never die and sits there in analog form on a reel for possibly centuries.
If you have any films from your parents, grandparents,
don't
throw away, even if you've done a digital copy, because that digital format will be obsolete in 10 years. Maybe it's already obsolete.
Anybody still using a mini DV camera even now?
And the film, you always have a new technology to process and transfer the film into whatever format. You know, people these days, they have separate. They will do a 4K scan of a film. You know, it's the new technology, 4K. Let's scan it to 4K. Maybe in 10 years it will be 10K, and obviously you have to go back to the original source, and the source is the film that you need to keep. So, you know, we have been rescuing films around Cambridge. We've been donated films that people they throw away, and that's valuable source. And you know, we had films that we treasured, which are historic of Cambridge back in the 70s. That, you know, without our group would have gone to the skip.
Yes, we get given loads of little yellow Kodachrome reels. You ever see any little yellow reels? That's Kodachrome. That's stuff from 3 generations ago. Please hang on to it.
Okay, I think we are maybe out of time.
I think we've had half an hour. Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
If you want to ask any question, we'll hang around for a bit. You know, the group is open to anybody who wants to join us. We've got lots of projects. If you've got ideas, if you want to know more about it, you know, join the group and have fun.
Also, if you rescue any stuff or get given any stuff, or somebody says, what on earth do I do with this, email us. We'll always help you. We know what stuff is, and if you want to get rid of it, we'll take it away, because I've got a loft full. So, but yes, we are here to hang on to something which has done great service. In that, as Thierry said, Super 8 itself is in its 50th anniversary this year. Home movie making goes back to just about the beginnings of film. I mean, the first domestic 8mm camera, I think, was 1920 something. You know, this is film for the people, film for people who do stuff their own way, and we want to keep it that way. So thanks very much.